In today's episode, I wanted to let you hear what a limiting belief actually sounds like.
This is how legends are made.
I've had people DMing me on Instagram with their particular concerns or needing some advice or guidance on. It's been fascinating and hugely successful. And I just picked up this one example because I think it might be quite useful. And it was that a guy was saying a number of things, particularly in the DM, but one thing that did stick out was that he said, life isn't fulfilling without my wife. Now his wife had left him. So the issue inside that is that he's linking having a partner or his wife, equaling that as having a good life, as if somehow without the wife or a partner, life isn't good. Now that's a very simple, maybe not obvious, limiting belief. Now why do I say that? Because what's going on is that he's linking these two things together and actually making them so contracted together that they cannot live independently in his head. He feels that having a wife or a partner will only make his life good. Now, first off is that we have to challenge and question, well, can life be good without having a partner in our lives? We can also challenge specifically what wife as a term, not the person, what term means for him. And we can also look at what the idea of life and good means for him. So in that very small sentence, which is why I've kept it small, we've broken out to lots of little pieces which all require a challenge in some form. We have to challenge, well, can life exist and be good without a partner? And do we challenge what actually he means by life? Does he mean his entire life? Well, what specifically does that mean? What does good mean for him? Now, you may be already populating the idea of what a good life actually is, but that's you. That's your information. Now, my information will be different, and his was different too. Why don't we get an idea of what he meant by good, as in terms of the things which satisfied him on an emotional and intellectual level, and then in terms of what those components were within his life, were this, his job, the things he did in his spare time, how or where he was living, what he considered to be his life. Once we get down to the idea of, okay, well, it's not your entire life we're talking about, it's just your relationships, okay, which is a drop down from life. Maybe not specific enough yet, but it's a drop down from life. We then go down and say, well, what isn't good about the relationship, or what do you need it to be good? And there'll be conditions of what good means for him. Maybe it's going to be a long-term partner, maybe it's a whole list of things. But what we're doing is breaking down each level to a specific point. And then we can also challenge the idea that actually a wife would, without the absence of a wife, are those things unavailable? Now, bearing in mind what I just said, well, they are very much separate. They don't have to be linked. In fact, having a good life may not need to have a long-term partner in it for some people, but for his thinking, it was limiting his thinking to believe that without a wife, he wouldn't have a good life. Does that make sense? And I hope it does, because it's really maybe simple, but it's very powerful that I was thinking in these particular generalizations where things can't happen unless something also happens or is attached to it, means we are just sitting around waiting and comparing and complaining that it's not going the way we wanted to. So what can we take from this? And I think it's about noticing that when we have these kind of bigger statements that we make, like life isn't good without a wife, or my life isn't good without having a partner, we are setting in such boundaries or suppressing happiness from entering our lives, because these conditions need to be met. Must have wife to get a happy life or a good life. But when we break that apart and understand it with better detail, we can then begin to say, okay, right, well, it's not life, it's a relationship, maybe it's work environment. Okay, if we could improve your work environment, would that make life good for you? Yes. Okay, great. So having a wife doesn't necessarily need to happen for your life to be good. Oh, well, no. So you're beginning to challenge and disrupt some of the thinking, as I was saying, these limiting beliefs. Now, as you worked through it, it was clear that it wasn't so much about the wife, it was about finding a fulfilling relationship. Now, but he also felt on the other side of that his life wasn't good in certain areas. He wanted certain things to happen regarding his job and obviously relation to relationships as well. But as we broke down through each one, so the work and his living conditions, once we worked out what specifically he needed to have happen, created a bit of a target list from that, that was far more useful for him. He could go and action things. In fact, we set targets up every 2 weeks, report in how are those targets going, and if they haven't worked, then what was causing the problem, readjust and recenter them, and then refocus back on them again. So what I wanted you to get from this was get a real sense of what a limiting belief is. It's not always just I can't. It's not always as obvious as that. Sometimes it's that, I must have a wife to have a good life, or until he does something, I can't be happy, or whatever combination of that. But they're basically, one has to be linked to the other to have those things. And as long as those aren't linked, there is no chance for it to work out. Anyway, with him, this began to break down some of his limiting beliefs. He began to move away from the idea that the wife that he had was pivotal to his good life. That life now had to be redefined, but good was still available to him. He was able to retarget certain things he wanted to work on, and then each week was going through that particular process. Now, it did reveal other things he needed to work on, particularly about his self-development and self-improvement, which we went through as well. But for this example, I hope you take away the idea that limiting beliefs aren't as obvious as they seem. They're ones which are often put into the clouds and generalized and made to be very big things. These kind of statements we have to watch out for, because once we can identify them, we can break them down and actually get some change and actually disrupt that limiting thought. So take that with you, see if it applies into your life, or maybe to friends, family, or even within your community if you hear it being used in some form. And as ever, let me know your thoughts. It'd be great to hear from you. Drop a comment down below and I'll reply to every single one of them. Other than that, have a fantastic day wherever you are.
This is how legends are made.